Okay, today we're going to just, I want to remind you that this Shabbos is Parshas Para, and Parshas Para is always read during the month of Adar. And the reason why it's read during the month of Adar is because this harkens back to a time when we had a temple and we had a Korban Pesach. And it was necessary for every family to bring a Korban Pesach. And in order to bring your Korban Pesach, you had to be tahor. You had to be ritually pure. And if you were ritually impure by having come in contact with death, and say you attended to the funeral of a loved one, then it would be necessary for you to purify yourself in a 7-day process of having the ashes of the paraduma sprinkled upon you on the 3rd and 7th day of that purification period. And you needed to prepare well in advance in order to guarantee that by the time Erev Pesach, the 14th of Nisan, came around, you would be tahor. So that's why it was typically announced during the month of Adar that everyone has to get ready. You have to get ready for Pesach and make sure that you, if you have become tameh, that you purify yourself with the ashes of the paraduma. There is a lot of discussion in the midrashic material about the connection between the paraduma and the Chet HaEgel and the sin of the golden calf, which is why quite often we read, many years it comes out that we read Parshas Para on Parshas KiSisa, because the Medrash itself says that the Para Aduma, despite the fact that it is described as the quintessential chok, as the mitzvah that defies human understanding, nevertheless, one sort of allusion to a reason for the paraduma is that it's an atonement for the Chet HaEgel. It's an atonement for the golden calf, which we read about in this week's Parsha. And the way the Medrash describes it is, let the calf come and clean up, let the mother come and clean up the calf's, the calf, the baby has made a mess of things, let the mother come and clean up the calf's the mess. So therefore, the whole idea of the para is the red heifer, the mother cow. Let her come and clean up the mess that the calf has made by messing up the king's palace. The analogy that the Medrash gives is to a baby who was let run free roam in the king's palace without a diaper, and he made a big mess, and the whole palace is now messy. You can all relate if you have children, right? What happens when you have to clean up a big mess in the house that the baby leaves? And so the king says, I can't tolerate this mess, let the mother of the baby come and clean up the mess. Yeah. Now, how this actually relates, we won't discuss today, but just bear in mind that it is Parshas Para. According to a minority opinion in the poskim, just like Parsha Zohar is a mitzvah deoraisa for both men and women to hear the laning of Parsha Zohar, this minority opinion rules that it's also a mitzvah deoraisa for men and women to hear Parshas Para. We don't, the majority does not rule that way, but there are some poskim who say that whenever you have the ability, you should make every effort to hear Parshas Para as well as Parshas Zohar. I just wanted to make that statement at the outset, but let me go to the end of Parshas KiSisa for a beautiful imagery. One of the most beautiful images that the Torah portrays for us is the image of Moshe Rabbeinu coming down from the mountain upon receiving the second set of luchos. After the Chet HaEgel, he has to go back up to Har Sinai for another 40 days, and we're told that this happens. He breaks the luchos on the 17th of Tammuz. He prays for forgiveness for 40 days until finally he gets some level of atonement or forgiveness from Hashem for the sin of the golden calf. And he goes back up on Rosh Chodesh Elul. He stays up on the mountain for 40 days, 40 nights, comes back down with the second set of luchos on Yom Kippur, which is why Yom Kippur is traditionally, since that time, was always known as the Day of Atonement, because it represents the idea of forgiveness manifested in the second set of luchos. And the Torah describes the face of Moshe Rabbeinu upon coming down from the mountain. And it says, Vayhi beredes Moshe me Har Sinai, that it was that when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, Ushnei luchos ha'edus biyad Moshe beridato min hahar, and the 2 tablets of testimony were in the hands of Moshe as he came down from the mountain, were in his hand as he came down from the mountain. Moshe lo yada, and Moshe was not aware, ki karan or panav b'dabero ito, that his face emanated beams of light when Hashem spoke with him. So this is, of course, the great sort of the great climax to the entire story. The Jewish people are reconciled with Hashem, and Moshe, who becomes the great reconciler, who achieves this atonement because of this great intervention that Moshe plays in reconciling Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his face emanates these beams of light. And here's a beautiful midrash. The beautiful midrash which I wanted to share with you talks about the basis of how or why it is, what caused Moshe's face to emanate with beams of light. What was the thing that triggered it? What was the actual mechanism that caused Moshe's face to beam with light? And this is the Medrash and SHMOS Rabbah. Mem Zayin Vav is the place where you can find it. So let's just read. It's a very short Medrash. We'll read it together. Moshe lo yada ki karan or panav. Moshe was not aware that his face was beaming with light. The skin off of his face was illuminated. Umehecha natal Moshe karnei hahod. From where did Moshe draw these, literally these horns of glory, or these beams of glory? Yeah? So we have three opinions in the Medrash. Rabbanan Amri min hame'ara. He got it from the cave. Shenemar v'haya ba'avor kivodi. As it says in what we're going to read in Parshas KiSisa, that is part of the forgiveness that Moshe was able to achieve for the Jewish people. Moshe asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Har'eni na es kivodecha. Moshe said to Hashem, please Hashem, show me your glory. This was a time when God had already said, I have forgiven, right, salachti, I forgive the Jewish people, I'm ready to forgive the Jewish people. And Moshe sees that this is an opportune time to ask Hashem for grace, for divine favor. And so Hashem says, Har'eni nas kevodecha, show me your glory, Hashem. And Hashem responds to him, Ki lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai, no one can see me and survive. So therefore what you're going to have to do is there's a cleft in the rock. There's a cave over there in the rock on Har Sinai. You need to go into the rock and cover your face, and my glory will pass over you. And that is the closest that you will have to be able to glimpse Hashem, to see the glory of Hashem. It's a very esoteric description of something that is going on that we don't really fully understand. But the Medrash says that it was from that experience of Hashem passing over Moshe, and Moshe really sort of receiving the glory of Hashem in a very intimate fashion, he was able to get those beams that emanated from his face. That's opinion number one. Opinion number two, says the Medrash, Rabbi Barachia HaKohen b'shem Rabbi Shmuel Amar, Haluchos hayu orchan vav tfachim v'rachban vav. He says, let me explain to you. He says, the tablets were 6 by 6 tfachim. They were square. Not normally the way that we are used to thinking of the tablets. They weren't rounded off on top, but they were 6 tall, and they were either, when you put them side by side, they were 6 wide, or each one was 6 wide. It's not clear. V'haya Moshe ochez b'tefachayim v'hashechina b'tefachayim u'tefachayim be'emtza. And Moshe, and this again is an esoteric description of something that obviously has to be metaphorical. It says that Moshe and God were both grasping on the tablets at one point when Hashem was giving the tablets to Moshe. God held on to one end of the tablets, 2 tfachim, 2 handbreadths on one end of the tablets. Moshe was holding on to the other end of the tablets, and there were 2 tfachim of tablets in between them that neither of them was grasping. And it says, Umisham natal Moshe karnei hahod. And it was from there, from that experience of Moshe grasping the tablets at the same time that God was, that Moshe was able to get these beams that emanated off of his face. Now, obviously, God doesn't have hands. And when it says God gave the luchos to Moshe, it wasn't that they were holding on to it at the same time. So, in my opinion, what this Medrash is trying to relate is that there was a certain reluctance on Hashem's part, like even when I want to give you a gift, and I give it to you, I'm still holding on to it, like reluctant to let go, until you have to pull it away. So that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. So that final act of pulling the luchos to himself, representing humanity, the Jewish people, and pulling it out of Hashem's hands, that's what caused Moshe to acquire the beams of light coming off of his face. And the third opinion of the Medrash, this is the third opinion of the Medrash, Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachman b'Shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Omer, Ad shehaya kosev b'kulmus nishtayer kima v'ha'eviro al rosho. That Moshe Rabbeinu was writing the very first Sefer Torah. Presumably, he started it already while he was atop Har Sinai. And as he was writing the first Sefer Torah, with using a quill and ink, some of that original divine ink that God, I guess, gave to Moshe atop Har Sinai remained a little bit in the quill, the Viro al Rosho, and Moshe sort of brushed the quill across his forehead. I guess maybe he was schwitzing or something, or maybe he had an itch. It's not clear from the Medrash. Umimenu na'asu lo karnei hahod, and it is from that leftover ink that these beams of light emanated from Moshe's forehead. Shenemar u'Moshe lo yada ki karan or panav. As it says, Moshe was not aware that his face was emanating these beams of light. Now, nothing that Chazal say is silly. It is everything that Chazal say is extremely directed, is extremely deliberate, and they have a very important message to convey to us. Sometimes the message is esoteric in nature, and therefore they speak in metaphor. And it is for us to unlock what Chazal are trying to convey to us. I don't claim to understand fully what this Medrash is trying to convey, but I thought perhaps we could suggest three different approaches to how a Jew becomes connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that are represented in these three different answers. The Medrash is trying to convey to us what it means to be religiously inspired, or how a person acquires religious inspiration. You can acquire religious inspiration in one of three ways. You do it through submissive obedience, by saying to yourself, I hereby place myself at Hashem's feet, and all I want to do is to bask in Hashem's presence. Shifti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai. Like David HaMelech says, let me just sit in your courtyards, Hashem, for my entire life. Lachazos b'noam Hashem levaker behechalot. To see, to gaze upon the pleasantness of Hashem and to visit His holy places. That's really all I want to do, is when you feel that sense of complete submissiveness, complete subservience, you imagine in your mind's eye that you're standing in Hashem's presence as you're davening the Shemona Esrei. That in itself can be a very inspiring religious experience that brings a person to a state of epiphany and to religious illumination. So that, I think, is represented by the idea of Moshe hiding in the cliff, or placing himself in the cleft of the rock and having HaKadosh Baruch Hu pass over him. That in itself gives him that divine inspiration, those beams of light. But that doesn't work for everybody. There are other kinds of people who acquire religious inspiration through the constant struggle that they have with God. There are people who don't feel that they don't have the personality and don't have the temperament to be able to have that submissive nature. And they need to constantly fight and wrestle with Hashem, just like Yaakov wrestled with the angel. And their religious growth comes through that sense of struggle, through the constant tension that is in their lives between the questions that they have and the answers that they try to put forth to be able to answer the questions. And the religious inspiration comes when you finally are able to pull away from Hashem those luchos and make them part of yourself, when you're in a tug of war with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the struggle that ensues between you and God, we're going to have it out until we hammer this thing out, and I make this Torah of yours mine. That effort in itself is the source of religious inspiration, of those beams of light that can emanate off a person's face. For some people, it just doesn't work to say, I'm going to bask in God's presence. I want to fight with God. I want to wrestle with God before I'm going to feel a sense of religious inspiration and satisfaction. That's the second way that a person can have beams of light emanate from their face. And for some people that doesn't work either. And some people have a certain creative spirit where they feel that they need to make the Torah theirs in a sense of, I need to put it in my own words. I need to be able, I don't have a struggle with Hashem, but I don't want it just to be Hashem's Torah. I need to be able to write it for myself. I need to be able to be creative, to take part in the Torah writing process. I'm not just ready to receive the Torah that Hashem gave to me. I need to embellish it, to add on to it, to be able to make my own additions and addenda and interpretations and extrapolations so that the Torah becomes mine. And for that person, the only way the Torah becomes a living Torah and becomes part of them is if they are constantly interpreting it and embellishing it and explaining it to the point where it becomes theirs. And that's represented by Moshe writing that Sefer Torah and wiping the ink across his forehead. That represents the efforts, his own initiative to write the Sefer Torah, and then to wipe the sweat off of his brow because he's been working and toiling so hard to write the Sefer Torah for himself, that's what causes the illumination to come off of his face. And I think one of the beautiful ideas of this midrash is that it's telling you that there is a variety of ways to reach that level of divine inspiration. No one can tell you what your entree to getting the beams of divine light to emanate off your face are. The important thing is to find your entree and to run with it. One person's inspiration could be another person's boredom or turn-off from Yiddishkeit. So it's important for every person to find their own path of entree. For some people it's prayer, for some people it's Torah study, for some people it's submission, for other people it's the very endeavor of struggling with it until you find some reconciliation. We should just merit to find our own entree so that those beams of light will emanate from all of our faces. Have a good day.